Yo, what's good? Amateur Lore here, and we're nearly finished covering every single Power 5 school's deepest March Madness run. We just got the ACC conference to do in this video, and then we will be done. And this is a little announcement. I don't know if I'll be making a bracket this year for the channel, but I do want to make a March Madness hot take video with my community, so drop some of your hot takes in the comments below to be included in that video. But this intro is already long enough. I hate doing those, so let's jump right into the video. And oh yeah, a like and a sub would be pimp if you think I deserve one. First team up in the ACC is the Boston College Eagles. For this program's basketball lore, there isn't really much, as the thing this program is probably most notable for is the point shaving scandal that happened during the 1978/79 basketball season when the Mafia bribed a couple of Boston College players to fix the games. Other than that, Boston College has been pretty quiet in the world of college basketball. As I'm currently recording this video, they're going on 16 years of not making the men's basketball tournament. Anyway, for Boston College's deepest run, we have to go all the way back to the 1993/1994 college basketball season. We're coached by Jim O'Brien and led by Bill Curley. The 2010 9th-seeded Boston College Eagles would open up with two nail-biters, taking down the Washington State Cougars in their first round game 67-64 and the first-seeded North Carolina Tar Heels 75-72 in their second round game. In the East Regional semifinals against the Indiana Hoosiers, Boston College would continue their magical run, winning 77-68, sending Boston College to the Elite Eight, where they would sadly get taken down by the Florida Gators 74-66, putting an end to the Boston College Eagles' deepest March Madness run to date. Next team up in the ACC is the Cal Golden Bears, and while this program hasn't been making too much noise around the college basketball world as of late, they do have some pretty interesting lore, going to 3 Final Fours and winning 1 national title, and also being the school that the 2024/25 NBA Finals MVP went to, Jaylen Brown. Alright, so for the Cal Golden Bears' deepest men's basketball tournament run, we have to take a look at that natty of theirs, which takes us all the way back to the 1958/59 college basketball season. We're coached by Pete Newell and led by the senior guard Denny Fitzpatrick. The 21-4 Cal Golden Bears would start their natty run with 2 blowout wins in the tourney, taking down Utah 71-53 and St. Mary's 66-46. In the national semifinals against the Cincinnati Bearcats, Cal would win 64-58 despite the NBA legend Oscar Robinson dropping an insane 19 points, 19 rebounds, and 9 assists, sending Cal to the natty where they would take down the Jerry West-led West Virginia Mountaineer squad 71-70. Next team up in the ACC is the Clemson Tigers. This school is obviously more known for their football accolades than basketball ones, but don't sleep on the Clemson basketball department, as even though they haven't won a national title or made the Final Four, they've still been pretty good, making a couple of deep runs in March, and while I'm recording, Clemson is sitting at 26-5, and looks like they are gearing up for another deep run. Anyway, for the Tigers' deepest tournament run, we only have to go back 1 year to the 2023/24 college basketball season. We're coached by Brad Burnell and led by PJ Hall. The 21-11 6-seeded Clemson Tigers would start their men's basketball tournament off winning against New Mexico 77-56 and Baylor 72-64, sending them to the Sweet 16 where they would face off against the Arizona Wildcats. This game would be tight, but thanks to an 18-point night from Chase Hunter and a 17-point night from PJ Hall, Clemson would come out on top, winning 77-72 against Arizona, advancing them to the Elite Eight where they would lose to a red-hot Alabama Crimson Tide basketball team 89-82, putting an end to the Clemson Tigers' deepest tournament run to date. From Clemson, we rotate over to the Duke Blue Devils, easily one of the most recognizable brands in not just the ACC, but throughout the entire college basketball world, as Duke has won 5 national championships, been to just an absurd 17 Final Fours, as well as producing many of your favorite NBA players. And an even crazier stat that I found is Duke has only missed the men's basketball tournament 3 times since the 1983/84 college basketball season, which just shows you how long Duke has been dominating college basketball for. Okay, so for the Blue Devils' deepest March Madness run, it obviously is going to be one of those 5 natties I mentioned, which takes us back to the 2014/15 college basketball season. We're coached by the GOAT Mike Krzyzewski and led by Jahlil Okafor. The 29-4 first-seeded Blue Devils would start their tourney off with 2 blowout wins against Robert Morris 85-56 and San Diego State 68-49. In the Sweet 16, things would be a little closer as Duke would only win 63-57 against Utah thanks to a 21-point outburst from Justice Winslow, but would get right back to blowing teams out, winning against Gonzaga 65-52 and in the Final Four versus Michigan State 81-61. And finally, to finish off Duke's latest national title run, a 68-63 win against Wisconsin. Next team up in the ACC is the Florida State Seminoles. This program hasn't been too dominant when it comes to college basketball, but they have been pretty decent, making it to 1 Final Four, the Elite Eight twice, and a handful of Sweet 16s. Although unfortunately, when I'm recording this video, it looks like the Seminoles are going to extend their streak of not making the men's basketball tournament from 3 years to 4 years, unless they somehow win the ACC tournament. But with how good Duke looks, I don't know, man, it's going to be tough. So for the Florida State Seminoles' deepest tournament run, we have to go back to that Final Four I mentioned earlier, which takes us back to the 1971/1972 college basketball season. We're coached by Hugh Durham and led by Ron King. The 18-5 Florida State Seminoles would open up the men's basketball tournament, barely escaping against Eastern Kentucky 83-81. However, the Seminoles would dominate their next 2 opponents, taking down Minnesota 70-56 and Kentucky 73-54, advancing the Noles to the Final Four where they would match up against the North Carolina Tar Heels. And thanks to a 22-point night from Ron King, Florida State would defeat North Carolina 79-75, sending them to the national championship where they would lose to the UCLA Bruins 81-76, putting an end to Florida State's deep deepest March Madness run to date. From Tally, we head up to Georgia, more specifically the A. For the next team up in the ACC, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. As of late, Georgia Tech has really fallen off the map, not making the men's tourney in the last 3 years. As I'm currently recording this video, they're sitting at 16-5, looking like they might not make it to the big dance once again. However, while the Yellow Jackets haven't been hot as of late, they do have some pretty decent history, making the Final Four twice, which takes us to their deepest run in March, which happened back during the 2003/2004 college basketball season. We're coached by Paul Hewitt and led by Jarrett Jack. The 23-9 third-seeded Yellow Jackets would open up March with a 65-60 win against Northern Iowa, and in a close call 57-54 against Boston College, sending Tech to the Sweet 16 where they would face off against Nevada, where thanks to a 23-point outburst from Marvin Lewis, it would give the Yellow Jackets the edge over the Wolfpack, winning 72-67, sending them to the Elite Eight where they would take down the Kansas Jayhawks 79-71. And in the Final Four, the game would go down to the wire, but the Yellow Jackets would come out on top, winning 67-65, advancing them to the national championship game where they would lose to the UConn Huskies 82-73, putting it into their deepest run to date. Next team up in the ACC is the Louisville Cardinals. And besides Duke and North Carolina, there isn't many teams in the ACC conference that can say they've been historically better than the Louisville Cardinals, as the Cards have gotten to 10 Final Fours and won 3 NCAA national championships, putting them in some pretty elite company. And while the program has had a little bump in the road because of the Rick Pitino scandal going on 5 straight years of not making the men's basketball tournament, as I'm recording, they look like a lock to make the big dance, so hopefully they can make some noise. For Louisville's deepest tourney run, I'm going to be using their 2013 Natty run, even though it's vacated, which takes us back to the 2012/2013 college basketball season. We're coached by Riz Pitino and led by Russ Smith. The 29-5 first-seeded Cards would open up their Natty run with 2 easy wins versus North Carolina A&T and Colorado State. In the Sweet 16 versus Oregon, things would be all business for Louisville, as Russ Smith would drop a 31 bomb, helping the Cards take down the Ducks 77-69. Louisville would keep the momentum rolling, dominating Duke 85-63 in the Elite Eight. However, things would slow down in the Final Four, as Louisville would actually be down for a good majority of the game against the Shockers, but a 20-point outburst from Luke Hancock would give the Cards the edge, helping them win 72-68 in the Final Four, sending them to the Natty where they would finish off the job against Michigan in the finals, winning 82-76. From one of the blue bloods of the ACC, we move over to a team who has just been pretty good, the Miami Hurricanes. Now, while the basketball program hasn't been crazy dominant over their history, only making the men's basketball tournament 12 times, and while I'm recording, they're sitting at 7-24 with their season pretty much over, I will say they have made the Final Four, and it came not too long ago, so let's take a look at it, which takes us back to the 2022/23 college basketball season, where coached by Jim Larinaga and led by Isaiah Wong, the 25-7 fifth-seeded Miami Hurricanes would open up their Final Four run with 2 good wins, taking down DG Academics' favorite college Drake 63-56 and Indiana 85-69. Versus the first-seeded Houston Cougars in the Sweet 16, Nigel Pack of the Hurricanes would drop 26 points, packing the Cougars out 89-75 in a game that Houston was favored by 8 in. In the Elite Eight, they were matched up against the Texas Longhorns. The Hurricanes would hold on and come out on top 88-81, sending the Canes to the Final Four where they would lose to the eventual national champs in the UConn Huskies 72-59, putting it into the Miami Hurricanes' deepest tournament run to date. The next team we're going to be looking at in the ACC is the NC State Wolfpack. North Carolina State has been one of the better teams in the ACC overall, going to 4 Final Fours and winning 2 national championships. And this is just my opinion, but the Wolfpack to me are the kings of the Cinderella March Madness run. Not having just one crazy run that would only happen because of miraculously winning the conference tournament, but 2. And for the Wolfpack's deepest tournament run, we're going to be looking at one of those 2 crazy runs, which takes us back to the 1982/1983 college basketball season. We're coached by the late Jimmy V and led by Thurl Bailey. The 20-10 6-seeded NC State Wolfpack would start their tournament off with a double overtime thriller against Pepperdine that they should have honestly lost, but this year God was taking shots for them, so they'd win 69-67. And the Buck Clippers wouldn't stop there, as in their next game they would take down UNLV 71-70 thanks to a 25-point night from Thurl Bailey, sending the Wolfpack to the Sweet 16 where they would finally have an easy win, taking down Utah 75-56. But right after that, we were right back to the close games, as North Carolina State would barely escape the first-seeded Virginia Cavaliers 63-62, and in the Final Four against Georgia 67-60, sending them to the Natty where they would match up against the Hakeem Olajuwon/Clyde Drexler-led Houston Cougars. And I think we all know how this would end, as the Wolfpack would win 54-52. Putting an end to maybe the greatest March Madness run ever. Staying in the state of North Carolina, the next team up in the ACC is the North Carolina Tar Heels. And I mean, just like Duke, what is there to say about North Carolina that hasn't already been said? As the Tar Heels are easily one of the most recognizable brands in basketball, producing countless top NBA draft picks as well as going to just a ridiculous 21 Final Fours, and winning 6 national titles. So when looking at the Tar Heels' deepest March Madness run, we're going to have to take a look at one of those 6 natties of theirs, which takes us back to the 2016/17 college basketball season, where coached by Roy Williams and led by countless NBA players, most notably to me, Justin Jackson, the 27-7 first-seeded Tar Heels would begin their natty run with a blowout against Texas Southern, 103-64, followed by a much closer win but still a good performance from North Carolina against Arkansas, 72-65. In the Sweet 16, the Tar Heels would handle Butler, 92-80, but from there things would get much tighter. As versus Kentucky, North Carolina would win 75-73, and in the Final Four versus Oregon, it would take a 25-point, 14-rebound night from Kennedy Meeks to give the Tar Heels the edge over the Ducks, 77-76. And in the natty, North Carolina would finish off the run, winning against the Gonzaga Bulldogs, 71-65. Next team up in the ACC ACC is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and while their basketball department isn't on the same level as the football department, they've still been pretty decent, making one Final Four and being pretty consistent in the world of college basketball. Oh yeah, and this is mad random, but one of my cats is named Lou or Dr. Lou, and yes, he is named after Lou Holtz. Anyway, for the Fighting Irish deepest tournament run, we're going to be taking a look at that Final Four I mentioned, which takes us back to the 1977/78 college basketball season. We're coached by Digger Phelps and led by Dave Baton, and the bad boy Piston himself, Bill Lambier. The 19-6 Notre Dame Fighting Irish would open up their tourney with two pretty good wins, taking down Houston 100-77 and Utah 65-56, sending the Irish to the regional final where they would match up against DePaul and put the beats on them, winning 84-64. Unfortunately, against the Duke Blue Devils in the Final Four, Notre Dame would lose 90-86, and to add salt to their wounds, they would lose to Arkansas in the third place game, putting an end to Notre Dame's deepest tournament run to date. From Notre Dame, we head over to the University of Pittsburgh for the next team up in the ACC, the Pittsburgh Panthers. When looking through their basketball lore, Pittsburgh has won Final Four, and I was kind of surprised at how good the Panthers were from 2001 to 2011, making the men's basketball tourney as a third seed or better 7 times, which is pretty impressive. Although it seems as of late, the Panthers have hit a tough stride, only making the men's basketball tournament once in the last 9 years. Anyway, for this program's deepest tourney run, we're not looking at their Final Four run because it came all the way back during the 1940/41 college basketball season. Instead, we're going to be looking at something a little more recent, which takes us to the 2008/2009 college basketball season. We're coached by Jamie Dixon and led by Sam Young. The 28-4 first-seeded Pitt Panthers would begin their march with the win against East Tennessee State 72-62 and would follow that win up with the 84-76 win against Oklahoma State. In the Sweet 16 against Xavier, a 19-point night from Sam Young would help propel the Panthers over the Musketeers 60-55, sending them to the Elite Eight where they would lose to Villanova in a tight game 78-76, putting an end to one of the Pitt Panthers' more recent deep runs in March. Moving on to one of the newcomers in the ACC, the SMU Mustangs. Man, this program hasn't been too hot as of late, only making the men's basketball tournament 4 times in the last 39 years. Although while I'm recording this video, the Mustangs do look like they might get in this year, so hopefully they do. So for this program's deepest tourney run, there isn't really much to choose from, so we're going to have to go all the way back to the 1955/1956 college basketball season. We're coached by Doc Hayes and led by Jim Krebs. The 19-2 SMU Mustangs would open up their tournament with a barn burner against Texas Tech that they would barely escape in, winning 68-67. Their next 2 games of the tourney would be a lot smoother, as they would take down Houston 89-74 and Oklahoma City 84-63, sending the Mustangs to the national semifinal where they would get blown out by the San Francisco Dons 86-68, and they would also lose in the third place game 90-81 to Temple, putting an end to SMU's deepest tournament run to date. From one of the newer ACC teams to another one in the Stanford Cardinal, this program has been to 2 Final Fours as well as winning it all way back during the 1941/42 college basketball season, and has been pretty decent throughout their history of playing high-level basketball. Although I do have to mention that as I'm recording, the Stanford Cardinal are going on 11 straight years of not making the men's basketball tournament, so hopefully they can turn things around soon. For Stanford's deepest tournament run, we're going to be looking at one of those 2 Final Fours, which actually came back-to-back instead of their natty run, since it happened way too long ago, which takes us back to the 1997/98 college basketball season. We're coached by Mike Montgomery and led by Arthur Lee. The 27-4 third-seeded Stanford Cardinal would begin their Final Four run with 2 impressive wins, taking down the College of Charleston 67-57 and Western Michigan 83-65. In the Sweet 16 against Purdue, a 15-point night from Mark Madsen would help give the Cards the edge, coming out on top of the Boilermakers 67-59, sending them to the Elite Eight where they would take down Rhode Island in a tight game 79-77. Unfortunately, this magical run would come to an end in the Final Four versus Kentucky, as the Cardinal would lose to the Wildcats 86-65. Alright, next team up in the ACC is the Syracuse Orange, and I don't know why, but I could have sworn that Syracuse has won at least 3 national titles, but that's not the case, as they have only won a single national title as well as going to 6 Final Fours. But still, those accomplishments are nothing to scoff at, as the Orange are definitely one of the big dogs of the college basketball world. Although as of late they haven't been too hot, not making the tourney for going on 4 straight years. But we're here for their deepest run, so let's talk about that championship of theirs, which takes us back to the 2002/2003 college basketball season. We're coached by Jim Boeheim and led by Carmelo Anthony. The 24-5 Orange would start their championship run with 2 wins in Boston versus Manhattan, 76-65, and Oklahoma State 68-56. In the Sweet 16 versus Auburn, an 18-point, 8-rebound night for Melo would help the Orange survive a barn burner against Auburn, as they would win 79-78. Versus Oklahoma, Syracuse would bowl them out 63-47. And in the Final Four versus Texas, a 33-point, 14-rebound night from Carmelo Anthony would propel the Orange over the Longhorns 95-84, sending them to the Natty, where they would finish off their championship run with an 81-78 win against the Kansas Jayhawks. From the Orange, we rotate over to the Virginia Cavaliers to talk about the next team up in the ACC. The Cavs have actually been one of the better ACC schools overall, winning 1 national title and going to 3 Final Fours. And this is just a random fact, but from 2013 to 2019, Virginia would make the men's basketball tournament as a 2nd seed or higher 5 times, with 4 of those seasons having them as the 1 seed, which is just pretty impressive. It's not too many programs can be that dominant for that long, even though it was only like a 6 or 7 year stretch. Anyway, for Virginia's deepest tournament run, we're going to be looking at that championship of theirs, which takes us back to the 2018/19 college basketball season. We're coached by Tony Bennett and led by Kyle Guy and DeAndre Hunter. The 29-3 first-seeded Virginia Cavaliers would open up their march with 2 dominant wins versus Gardner-Webb 71-56 and Oklahoma 63-51. In the Sweet 16 versus the Ducks, the Cavs would escape a close one, winning 53-49. And in the Elite Eight versus Purdue, the game would require overtime, and even though the Boilermakers guard Carson Edward would drop a nasty 42 points, Virginia would survive, winning 80-75, and would follow that up with a controversial win against Auburn in the Final Four, where maybe a double dribble should have been called, but it's history now, as Virginia would win 63-62. And the Cavaliers would finish off their natty run, taking down the Texas Tech Red Raiders 85-77, bringing home Virginia's lone basketball title. Next team up in the ACC is the Virginia Tech Hokies, and unlike their extremely dominant football department, the basketball side of things have been just about average, not making it to the Final Four and only making the tournament a total of 13 times. And while I'm currently recording, the Hokies currently look like they most likely won't be making the men's basketball tournament this year. Anyway, for Virginia Tech's deepest March Madness run, we're going to have to go all the way back to the 1966-67 college basketball season. We're coached by Howie Shannon and led by Glenn Combs. The 17-6 Hokies would open up the men's basketball tournament with an 82-76 win against Toledo in their first round game. The Hokies' next game in the NCAA tourney would be versus the Indiana Hoosiers, and thanks to a 29-point night from the Hokies star guard Glenn Combs, it would give the Hokies the edge over the Hoosiers, winning 79-70, sending them to the regional final where they would lose to the Dayton Flyers 71-66, putting an end to the Hokies' deepest March Madness run to date. Leaving Virginia, we head over to North Carolina for the final team left to cover in the ACC, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Now, Wake Forest kind of surprised me, and not in the good way. I could have sworn the Demon Deacons had won a title and been to a couple of Final Fours, not just one, but I was totally wrong, as Wake Forest has only been to one Final Four, and surprisingly to me, it does not come during the years with Tim Duncan or Chris Paul. But hey, that's college basketball for you. Even when you have a future top 20 all-time player on your squad, you can still come up short in the tournament. So for the Demon Deacons' deepest tournament run, we're going to have to go all the way back to the 1961-62 college basketball season. We're coached by Bones McKinney, no Sesh Hollow Water Boys, and led by Lynn Chappelle, who averaged just an absurd 30 points and 15 rebounds. The 18-8 Wake Forest Demon Deacons would begin their run with back-to-back overtime wins, starting off with the 92-82 win against Yale that saw Lynn Chappelle dropping 25 and 18. Bro was just a straight-up beast, and his team would need every bit of that huge stat line. And next up, taking down St. Joseph's 86-85 in overtime, setting up a matchup versus Villanova with a trip to the semifinals on the line. Wake Forest would come out on top 76-69 and face off against Ohio State in the semifinals, where sadly they would be outplayed, losing 84-68. But to end this video on a positive note, Wake Forest would win the third place game 82-80 against UCLA.